Let me take you back to where this story begins. Our protagonist, we'll call him Alex since his Reddit username doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, was a fourth-year computer science student at what he describes as a pretty respected university. This was supposed to be his final semester. The finish line was in sight. After 4 grueling years of coding, debugging, all-nighters fueled by energy drinks and questionable life choices, Alex was ready to walk across that graduation stage. One of his final classes was focused on modern advancements and trends in technology. Now, according to Alex's post, the class didn't require too much heavy lifting, but it was still an upper-level course that demanded substantial work. For the final assignment, students had to produce a 20-page research paper exploring a current or emerging technology within their field. 20 pages! That's no joke. That's the kind of assignment that makes you question every life decision that led you to that major. But Alex chose a fascinating topic: helium-3 power generation. For those unfamiliar, helium-3 is a rare isotope that could potentially revolutionize energy production through nuclear fusion. It's serious, cutting-edge stuff, the kind of topic that shows you've been paying attention in class. And Alex worked his tail off on this paper. He poured everything into it: research, citations, diagrams, analysis. By the time he finished, he was genuinely proud of what he'd created. The paper was due at midnight. Like many students, let's be honest, like most students, Alex waited until the very end to submit his final draft. He wanted it to be perfect. He wanted to polish every sentence, catch every typo, make sure his citations were formatted correctly. But here's where we need to understand something crucial about Alex. Something that makes this story go from typical college mishap to absolutely mortifying catastrophe. Alex had a secret. Not a small secret, not a "I sometimes eat cereal for dinner" kind of secret. This was a secret with capital letters. For the past 3 years of college, Alex had been making money in a very specific way. He wasn't working a normal part-time job. He tried that in his first year and, as he puts it, really didn't like it. He'd worked some internships when they came up, but otherwise he avoided traditional employment. And this presented a problem. How do you pay bills and tuition without a regular job? Enter Alex's unconventional solution. For 3 years, he had been writing commissioned erotica. But not just any erotica, hardcore furry erotica. Let me explain for anyone unfamiliar with this corner of the internet. The furry community is a subculture interested in anthropomorphic animal characters, animals with human characteristics. And like any large community, it has its adult content. Some members commission custom stories, art, and other content featuring specific characters and scenarios. And apparently there was good money in it. According to Alex's post, he wrote, "Anything, any fetish, any premise, anything." In certain parts of that community, he became really popular. At his peak, he was making almost $2,500 a month on Patreon, plus additional charges to individual customers. That's not pocket change. For a college student juggling classes and trying to survive, that's genuinely good money. But as Alex himself admits in his post, "Am I proud of this? No." He goes on to say, verbatim, "I have written some really disgusting stuff, but it paid the bills and the money was too good to pass up." He told himself that the minute he landed a real job after graduation, he was cutting ties with this work completely. Just a few more months, just get through finals, just graduate. This detail is important to verify. Alex explicitly states he has been doing this work for 3 years and was making approximately $2,500 per month. Whether these exact income figures are accurate cannot be independently verified from the post alone, but he provides specific details about using Patreon and taking individual commissions. Now, Alex mentions that being a student and doing this commission work simultaneously really doesn't mix well. And in the nights leading up to his paper deadline, he hadn't been sleeping much. Finals week tends to do that. Multiple deadlines converging, stress mounting, the finish line tantalizingly close but still out of reach. The research paper on helium-3 power generation was due at midnight. But Alex also had commission work to complete. Multiple files open on his computer, multiple deadlines, multiple documents with very, very different content. And here is where everything went catastrophically wrong. It was 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes until the deadline. Alex was exhausted, sleep-deprived, running on fumes and probably caffeine. He had his research paper ready to go, final draft, all polished. He just needed to upload it to the class submission portal, and he'd be done. One final down, graduation secured. He navigated to the upload page, found the file on his computer, clicked submit, and then he went to bed. Mission accomplished, right? The submission portal locked at midnight. His paper was in. He could finally sleep. Tomorrow he'd check his other classes, see his final grades rolling in, and start planning his graduation party. When Alex woke up the next morning, he did exactly that. Started checking grades for his other courses, probably feeling pretty good about himself. 4 years of computer science education coming to a close. And then he saw it. An email from his professor. Not a grade, not feedback, just a simple message. Come to my office after class today. Now, if you've ever been a student, you know that an email like this triggers immediate panic. Professors don't usually ask you to come to their office for good reasons. This isn't, come by so I can tell you how brilliant your paper was. This is, we need to talk and it's going to be uncomfortable. Alex's exact words in his post? I want to fucking die right now. But why? Why would the professor need to see him? And that's when Alex must have opened the submission portal, must have looked at what he'd actually uploaded, and saw the wrong file. In his sleep-deprived, deadline-panic state, Alex had uploaded his commission work instead of his research paper. Not his 20-page analysis of helium-3 power generation and its potential to revolutionize energy production. He'd submitted hardcore furry erotica. Specifically, and I'm quoting his post here because this detail is just, it's something. A story featuring a wolfman jacking off in a dragon's stomach. Let that image settle in for a moment. This was his final paper for a senior-level computer science course at a respected university. 20 pages were expected, 20 pages were submitted. Just extremely different 20 pages than anyone was anticipating. Alex's post continues. I don't know how I'm going to explain why instead of my final, I submitted a hardcore erotic story with a wolfman jacking off in a dragon's stomach, but yeah, I fucked up big time. The magnitude of this mistake is almost hard to comprehend. This wasn't accidentally turning in a draft instead of the final version. This wasn't forgetting to put your name on the paper. This wasn't even plagiarism or some academic integrity violation. This was submitting sexually explicit content, very specific sexually explicit content, to your professor, for a grade. Put yourself in Alex's shoes for a moment. You're about to graduate, you're this close, and you've just submitted content that could get you expelled, or at minimum, failed out of your final semester. Because let's be clear, this isn't just embarrassing. Depending on university policies, this could be grounds for serious disciplinary action. Even if it was an obvious accident, even if you have the real paper saved on your computer, you've still submitted sexually explicit material to a professor through an academic submission system. And Alex knew all this. He knew his academic career might be sentenced to death, as he put it. The submission portal had locked at midnight. There was no way to unsend it, no way to swap the files. What was done was done. All he could do was wait for the meeting. Can you imagine that day? Going to class, knowing what's coming? every minute ticking by, knowing that after class you have to sit across from your professor and explain that? The post ends here for the moment with a TLDR summary. In my final semester at college, instead of submitting my final research paper, I submitted hardcore furry erotica someone paid me to make. Professor wants to talk, and I want to die. And for hours, potentially days, Reddit readers were left hanging. What happened in that office? How did the professor react? Did Alex get expelled? Did he graduate? The suspense must have been agonizing, both for Alex and for everyone following the story. Then came the update. Alex posted a follow-up. The meeting had happened, and he lived to tell the tale. His update begins. Well, I just left his office and I still want to die. Not as much, though. Not as much. That's promising, right? That suggests he wasn't immediately expelled or failed. There's a glimmer of hope in that opening sentence. Alex had taken advice from Reddit commenters because, of course, between his original post and the meeting, hundreds of people had been offering suggestions. The consensus was clear. Print out the real paper. Bring physical proof that you actually did the assignment. So Alex printed his helium-3 power generation research paper and brought it with him to the professor's office. I won't lie, Alex writes. When I sat down with him, I was already almost in tears from the stress and embarrassment. Imagine that scene. You sit down in your professor's office. He has your submission pulled up on his computer. You know what's in that file. He knows what's in that file. Everyone in the room knows that everyone knows. The elephant isn't just in the room. It's a wolfman inside a dragon, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. Now, the post doesn't provide a complete transcript of the conversation. We don't get exact quotes of what the professor said. What we do know is that Alex showed him the printed research paper, presumably explained the horrible mix-up, and the professor was understanding. Let me repeat that, because it's genuinely surprising and honestly quite remarkable. The professor was understanding. According to multiple discussions of this story across Reddit and other platforms, the professor essentially told Alex to submit the correct paper and they would never speak of this again. The classic, let's pretend this never happened approach. This is where we need to acknowledge what's verifiable and what's not. The original post confirms that Alex met with his professor and that the outcome was not catastrophic. He didn't get expelled, he wasn't failed. The post states he showed the professor his real paper, and the situation was resolved. The specific details of the conversation, exact words spoken, whether the professor laughed, got angry, or simply wanted to move past it as quickly as possible, these aren't detailed in the post. The community discussions and retellings suggest the professor took a never speak of this again stance, which aligns with Alex's relief in the update, but that specific phrasing doesn't appear in Alex's original words. What is clear is that this professor showed remarkable restraint and professionalism. Think about it from their perspective for a moment. You're grading final papers. You open a submission expecting analysis of technological advancement. Instead, you get, well, that. The professor could have reported Alex to the administration, could have triggered a lengthy investigation, could have failed him outright. Instead, the professor chose pragmatism and mercy. They recognized an honest mistake, albeit a spectacularly mortifying one, and allowed Alex to submit the correct work. And here's something worth considering. This professor is human too. They almost certainly have a sense of humor about this. Not directed at Alex in a cruel way, but just the sheer absurdity of the situation. Because let's be honest, this is an objectively hilarious story. Horrifying if you're living through it, absolutely. But from an outside perspective, this is comedy gold. It's the kind of story that gets told in faculty lounges for years. Let me tell you about the time a student accidentally submitted. In fact, there was a follow-up citing of this story from the professor's perspective. According to discussions in the r Best of Redditor Updates subreddit, someone found a post in r Professors, a subreddit for college and university instructors, where a professor shared basically this same story from their point of view. This cannot be independently verified to be the exact same professor, and the posts don't link to each other directly in the available sources, but the timing and details align closely. If true, it means both parties felt compelled to share this absurd incident with their respective online communities. And really, can you blame either of them? This is the kind of story that's too bizarre not to share. It's the academic equivalent of a unicorn sighting, rare, unbelievable, and worth documenting. So what are the broader lessons here? Beyond the obvious, check your file before hitting submit, I mean. First, let's talk about the hidden economy of college students. Alex's situation is unusual in its specific details, but the broader pattern isn't. College students are constantly finding creative ways to make money while balancing their studies. Some do traditional part-time work, sure, but others freelance, sell art, write code, tutor, create content, whatever works with their schedule and skills. Alex found something that paid well and fit his schedule, even if it wasn't something he was proud of. And he's not alone in doing work that exists in internet's stranger corners. The gig economy and online anonymity have created countless opportunities that didn't exist a generation ago. Second, this story highlights the absolutely crucial importance of file management and submission protocols. In the age of digital submissions, we're all just one click away from sending the wrong thing to the wrong person. How many times have you almost sent a text to the wrong person, attached the wrong file to an email, shared something with the entire company instead of just your team? We've all been there. Alex just had a more colorful version of this universal anxiety. Some universities have started implementing preview systems for submissions. You see exactly what you're submitting before it's finalized. Some require specific file naming conventions that would make this kind of mix-up harder. But when you're exhausted and racing against a midnight deadline, mistakes happen. Third, and perhaps most importantly, this story demonstrates the value of human understanding and proportional responses. The professor in this scenario had every right to handle this by the book, to report it, trigger investigations, follow official protocols. Instead, they assessed the situation, recognized it for what it was, a mortifying accident by an exhausted student, and handled it with discretion and pragmatism. Not every story like this ends so fortunately. Academic institutions have rules, and those rules exist for good reasons. But they're enforced by humans who can, when appropriate, exercise judgment and mercy. Now, we should note that several elements of this story remain unverified. Alex never specifies which university he attended. The exact amount of money he made from commissions is self-reported. The specific content and details of the erotic story are described only briefly. The professor's exact words and reactions aren't quoted directly. These gaps don't mean the story is false. Reddit's r/Tifu subreddit is specifically designed for people to share their mistakes, and the moderators of that community work to verify stories when possible. But as with any anonymous internet story, some skepticism is reasonable. What we know for certain is that this story resonated with millions of people. It was widely shared, discussed on multiple platforms, even featured in video content and articles. Whether every detail is exactly as described or somewhat embellished, the core narrative clearly struck a chord. Because at its heart, this is a story about universal fears. The fear of failure, especially when you're so close to success. The fear of humiliation. The fear that one mistake will unravel everything you've worked for. The fear of being judged for things you're not proud of. And it's also a story about unexpected grace, about someone in a position of power choosing understanding over punishment, about surviving your worst nightmare and coming out the other side. Did Alex graduate? His post doesn't provide a final update confirming his graduation, but given that the professor allowed him to submit his actual paper, it's reasonable to assume he completed his degree. Did he quit his commission work as planned? Again, no follow-up on this. But what we can say is this. Alex lived through what might be one of the most mortifying academic moments possible, shared it with the internet, and became part of Reddit folklore. His story serves as both a cautionary tale and an oddly comforting reminder. Even our worst moments can be survived. Even our most embarrassing mistakes can, eventually, become stories we share. Maybe not at family dinners, but somewhere. So the next time you're about to hit submit on anything important, an email, a document, a file, take one extra second. Double check. Make sure you're sending what you think you're sending. Because somewhere out there, a computer science graduate learned this lesson in the hardest possible way. And honestly, we can all learn from his spectacular mistake. In the end, this story reminds us that behind every Reddit username is a real person navigating real challenges, sometimes with grace, sometimes with catastrophic file management errors, but always with the resilience to face another day, even after accidentally submitting Furry Erotica to their professor.